Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling, well, a truly massive concept. It's a metaphysical framework the sources are calling the Great Arc, a curriculum of becoming. Yeah, and this curriculum, it's supposed to map the entire journey of consciousness, from this infinite origin point right down to,
Yeah.
well, to us, individual awakened consciousness.
Yeah.
Our mission today, though, is pretty specific. We want to pull out the core progression, the real backbone of this journey, and we're going to use a maybe surprising central metaphor to do it. Voice, sound, and resonance. That's our guide.
And that auditory lens, it's actually key. The sources argue this isn't just some abstract philosophy. It's defining existence itself as a kind of purposeful educational program, a curriculum.
Written into everything.
That's the idea. Written into life, culture, even maybe physics. It's presented as this inherent structure for waking up.
Okay, let's dive in right at the start, the absolute beginning. Before anything we know, there was the source, a state of fullness, radiance,
Yeah.
not emptiness, not chaos.
Right. Infinite potential.
So if everything's infinite and complete there, how does a finite reality like ours even begin? How does it get sectioned off?
Well, the first critical step, according to these sources, is containment. You absolutely need a limit, an external boundary.
Like drawing a line.
Exactly. They describe it as a literal field boundary, a structured enclosure. It's like separating the waters above from the waters below, to use that old language. It's fundamentally pragmatic.
Pragmatic how?
Because without that container, any emerging consciousness, any fragment of life would just be instantly overwhelmed, dissolved right back into the infinite source.
Okay. So containment creates a safe space, a defined area where individuality can actually form and, persist.
Precisely, a measurable operating space.
Okay, so you have the boundary. What's inside? What's the stuff reality is made of?
That's the medium. The sources often call it the ether. Not quite the old scientific concept, but more like the fundamental substance, the fabric God authored, as one text puts it.
So like a quantum field.
Sort of, yeah. A vibrant, responsive substrate. It's the place where pure energy can finally be shaped, compressed, become matter, become something tangible.
And they connect this to ancient myths.
They do. They suggest things like the sea of glass mingled with fire or the primordial waters in Genesis are actually attempts to describe this.
Yeah.
This primal energy field, this transitional zone.
Right. That sets the stage. Now the big step, consciousness enters this contained field, and the term they use is really potent, fallen light. We need to be super clear what fallen means here.
Yes, absolutely crucial. It's not moral. It has nothing to do with sin or error. It's a physical state, a state of compression.
A technical term almost.
Exactly. Think of it as a necessary physical limitation, purely for the sake of having an individual experience. It's a narrowing of perception.
Like focusing a beam.
Perfect analogy. The infinite, all-encompassing radiance of the source gets fractured, compressed into countless individual vessels or fragments.
But why? Why that compression? Why not stay infinite?
Because if you stayed infinite, you wouldn't be you. You'd still be the source. That compression, that narrowing, is what allows you to exist as an individual with a unique perspective.
So the source essentially limits itself to experience itself through all these different finite points of view.
That's the core idea, a sacrifice of omnipresence for the richness of individual experience.
Okay, so we have this cosmic compression, this fallen light forming individual fragments. How does that huge abstract idea actually show up in your life, in human development?
The sources map it surprisingly directly onto our development. And sound, specifically our first relationship with sound, is key. Think about early childhood.
Okay.
As an infant, a young child, you're living entirely inside the parent's reality field, essentially. You're learning what existence is from the resonance of an outside mind.
And the voice is central there.
Absolutely central. This is where the sources use that incredible phrase. The parent's voice is a literal force of nature for the child. Your voice is their physics.
Wow. Not just communication, but physics.
It's shaping their world. It's the primary input that constructs their initial understanding of reality. Their neural pathways, their sense of safety, what's possible, what's dangerous. It's all calibrated by that voice.
That's profound. It means inconsistency or chronic negativity from a parent isn't just emotionally damaging.
It literally warps the child's foundational map of the universe. It affects their sense of reality's reliability.
So it creates a faulty map from the get-go.
It can, yes. And then the natural progression, part of the curriculum, really, is that the individual fragment, the growing child, then adult, gets so absorbed in their own internal map
That they start thinking the map is the territory.
Exactly. They start believing their limited perspective is the whole world. They feel self-contained, self-sufficient within their own little bubble. That's the core illusion the curriculum aims to address.
Okay, that makes sense as a developmental stage, but it sounds like a trap, too. How does the system, this curriculum, intentionally break that illusion?
Through something the sources call the crack.
The crack.
Yeah. It's the experience of profound, unavoidable loss. Something that shatters your assumed reality.
Like death. Or a major departure.
Precisely. The death of a loved one, a permanent separation, the end of a truly fundamental relationship. This isn't random cruelty. It's described as the designed mechanism to dismantle that illusion of self-sufficiency.
How does loss do that?
Well, when someone utterly central is gone, the sources say silence replaces voice. The constant defining physical presence and its sound vanishes.
And you're left with the emptiness.
Right. And that silence, that void, forces a confrontation. It compels you to realize that the love, the connection, it wasn't just contained in the physical body, the flesh that disappeared.
It was something else.
It was an intangible pattern resonance imprint that you discover continues inside you, even when the source of the sound is gone.
That sounds incredibly painful, though. To suggest grief is intentional, part of the design, isn't that a bit bleak?
It sounds bleak, but the sources frame it completely differently. They actually call the pain of loss the final gift.
What gift?
Because it's the ultimate proof that love never ends. The pain is the evidence that the connection was real, transcending the physical. Grief isn't an error in the system, it's a revelation. It forces you to seek the connection beyond the physical boundaries you thought were absolute.
So grief is a pointer, a painful guide towards something bigger.
Exactly. A revelation about the true nature of relationship and reality.
Okay, so this profound loss, the crack, reveals that connection transcends the physical. What fundamental rule about the system itself does this experience expose?
It points directly to what the sources call the governing law of any contained system. Every observer inside a system has less capacity than the system itself, meaning the part can never fully contain, grasp, or solve the whole. You, as a fragment inside reality, cannot encompass all of reality. It's a fundamental limit.
A systemic boundary.
Precisely. And what's really fascinating, maybe even jarring, is how the sources connect this metaphysical principle directly to hard limits discovered in science and mathematics.
You mean like impossibility theorems?
Exactly. They argue that things like Gödel's incompleteness theorems, the Turing halting problem, even Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. They aren't just quirks of math or physics. They're different expressions of this same fundamental truth about containment.
Okay, let's unpack Gödel for a second.
Yeah.
How does that relate to, well, to me, trying to understand everything?
Well, Gödel proved, basically, that in any sufficiently complex formal system, like arithmetic, there will always be true statements that you cannot prove using the rules within that system.
The undecidables.
Right. To prove them, you have to step outside the system's boundaries, use a higher logic. That unprovable truth, that residue, is what the sources call the signature of containment. It's the mathematical ghost of the larger reality haunting the limited system.
Oh, okay. So Turing and Heisenberg fit this pattern too, showing limits on what an internal observer can know or compute.
That's the argument. They all point to this fundamental limitation. The observer inside cannot fully map or master the system they inhabit.
So this seems pretty restrictive. If we're fundamentally limited like this, what does it mean for the individual, the fragment, who's trying to reach the source, or enlightenment, or whatever you call it?
It leads directly to the concept of the veil. This boundary separating the individual fragment from the totality, the source. It isn't just a neutral barrier.
What is it then?
The sources describe it vividly as both a curse and a mercy.
How can it be both?
Well, it's a curse because it hides the full picture, right? It keeps us in this state of limited perception, feeling separate. That's the painful part.
And the mercy.
The mercy is that this very same self-concealment, as they call it, is what protects your individuality. If the veil vanished instantly, your distinct consciousness, the you that was painstakingly formed through compression, it would dissolve back into the infinite source.
You'd lose yourself.
You'd lose your hard-won uniqueness, so the veil, in a way, preserves you while also limiting you.
Okay, so if the part can't contain the whole, and the veil is both limit and protection, what does this ultimately mean for someone trying to achieve reunion with the source, for self-salvation?
The sources are really blunt here, incredibly blunt. You cannot climb out. It's impossible.
No amount of effort works.
Nope. Any attempt made purely from within the system, whether it's deeper scientific discovery, more complex philosophy, more intense spiritual practice, it ultimately just loops back into the system. It hits that Gödelian wall.
Because you're still operating within the container.
You're still the fragment trying to become the whole, which is definitionally impossible from the inside. Self-salvation, from this perspective, is a systemic non-starter.
And they use those powerful analogies.
Yeah, they really drive it home. The sim cannot reach the computer.
Yeah.
However complex the game gets inside, the character can't just will itself out into the machine running it.
Sure.
The child cannot build the parent. The creation cannot fathom or generate its creator. The gap is just unbridgeable from below.
Okay, if climbing out is impossible, systemically, mathematically, metaphysically impossible, then what is the resolution? How does the fragment complete the arc, this curriculum?
There's only one way, according to these sources. The movement has to come from the other direction. It requires descent.
Descent, meaning the source comes down.
Exactly. The source itself, the larger reality, must step down into the contained system it created. It has to breach the boundary from the outside. That's the only way to bridge the gap established by
It
containment.
sounds like intervention, grace.
It's framed exactly like that across many traditions represented in the sources. It's the word becomes flesh, it's the hand reaches into the sandbox, it's the player lifts the sim. An intentional external act is required.
And connecting back to our main theme today, voice and sound, this intervention, this descent, it's framed as an auditory event.
Fundamentally, yes, the sources are quite clear. Revelation requires a voice from beyond. Because the system was initially defined by a voice, the parent's physics, the ultimate resolution, the invitation out or alignment, must also come via a voice.
But not just any voice.
No, critically, a voice originating outside the system's boundaries. A voice from the source itself, cutting through the noise within the container.
Which brings us to the final stage, the goal of the whole curriculum, it seems. It's not about knowing everything.
No, it's not about achieving omniscience. That would erase individuality, remember? The veil breaking completely. The final stage is recognition.
Recognition of what?
Recognition of that authentic signal, that specific voice from beyond. The ultimate task for you, the fragment, isn't to become God, but to develop the discernment to hear God's voice when it speaks to you, within your experience.
So it's about filtering.
Precisely. Discerning the shepherd's voice among static. The contained system is full of noise, internal chatter, echoes, competing signals. The final exam, if you will, is recognizing the true external signal when it arrives.
And when that recognition happens, when you hear and identify that authentic voice, what's the result?
That's the culmination. Awakened resonance. When the individual fragment successfully recognizes and tunes into that authentic voice, it vibrates back into coherence with the source.
Coherence, not absorption.
Critically, without losing its unique note, you don't dissolve, you align. Your unique frequency, honed through the entire journey of compression and experience, finds its perfect harmony with the larger composition.
The arc is complete.
Exactly. You move from being defined by an external, limited voice through the silence that reveals transcendence to finally resonating consciously with the voice of the source itself. Limited experience finds its place in final, coherent alignment. Hashtag tag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a journey we've just traced.
Yeah.
From being defined by someone else's voice, essentially the physics of our childhood, through the shattering silence of loss, the crack, which reveals love transcends the physical,
Right, the point or beyond.
to the impossibility of climbing out on our own, and finally to this ultimate goal, simply recognizing the right voice when it enters the system from beyond the veil.
And the whole curriculum, the whole arc, is designed not for you to erase yourself back into the source, but to find your unique frequency, your specific note, and then to harmonize that note with the whole, to contribute your unique sound to the symphony.
So for you listening, this framework offers maybe a different perspective. Instead of striving for some kind of total knowledge, trying to figure everything out from the inside.
Which the sources say is impossible anyway.
Right. The focus shifts entirely. It becomes about listening, about discernment, about developing the ability to recognize the authentic signal that, according to this, is already reaching out.
Which leads us to a final provocative thought for you to consider. If these sources are right, and things like Gödel's theorems or the halting problem are just mathematical echoes of this fundamental cosmic law about containment, what other limits do we run into?
Limits we struggle against.
Exactly. What undecidables or seemingly insurmountable barriers do you encounter in your own life, maybe professionally, maybe personally, Could it be that those frustrations, those limits we fight, aren't just obstacles, but are actually, like Gödel's theorems, revealing the signature, the very shape of the larger system we're all embedded within?